and you guys probably know what it is. It's this entire like Jameson Williams like coverage, like the manner in which it's unfolded. Um, when it happened last week when OTAs first kicked off, I was more understanding of it. It's the first time the media's gotten a chance to talk to Jamo. So all of these questions about his suspension, all these questions about his social media, all these questions about his maturity, fine, we're going to get him out the way because we finally get to talk to him. And you also get to talk to the coaches about him for the first time. So it's like, okay, fine. Get it out. I didn't love it then either, but I at least understood it. I at least understood why people were asking the questions. And I think what has now happened, I kind of said this on Twitter, is like I think we've kind of reached this point where the questions that are being lobbied about JMO's maturity or his social media or whatever has gone beyond the scope of like, well, this is what he deserves, right? Like he put himself in this situation because that's what a lot of people have said. The reason why he's being asked these questions is because he did this to himself. And I think that was fine for the first week that he was asking them. If you didn't get your answer by that point, why are we still talking about it? And I don't mean to tell anybody how to do their job. I'm not a journalist. I haven't gone to school for these types of things, and I don't know what type of piece is being put together where these answers or these questions are important. But as a fan on the outside looking, I kind of sit here and I'm just like, wait, are we still talking about his maturity? Are we still talking about the suspension with all the information that's come out, even about the suspension, as far as again how it's impacting the league and how players are responding to it? Um, it's really odd to me. And Grit kind of also points out the fact Jared Goff has already kind of stood up for JMO, right? They asked Goff about it, and he very much didn't want to participate in the conversation. Um, and that's kind of where I'm at now. The questions about his maturity to me have been played out. I feel like we've ran the course with these maturity questions because and this is me. This is my personal opinion. You guys might disagree. You guys may see maturity differently than I do. But for me, maturity is the things that we haven't heard about Jamo. We haven't heard about him having a DUI. We haven't heard about him having being caught with like, drugs or failing a drug test. No domestic violence issues. He's not, you know, having, baby mama drama out here like on, the internet and things like that. He's definitely not pulling a Zion Williamson right now. He's not Ja Morant. And so like for me, I start to question like, so what exactly are we talking about when we say maturity? Because what it's starting to sound like to me is that you just don't like the way that like he presents himself. And if that's the case, that's fine. Like you don't have to love everybody's demeanor. Not everybody's demeanor is everybody's cup of tea, right? My demeanor may not be everybody's cup of tea. Um, but I feel like there's a lot of people that are rubbed the wrong way by JMO, and I can't quite put my finger on why it is, but I feel like the maturity thing has been mislabeled. I think people again don't know how to characterize him, and so when people don't know how to properly characterize somebody, I think it's just easier to just say like, oh well, he did this, I didn't like it. That's a lack of maturity. When in actuality, like, is it really like the suspension thing? I think has to be looked at differently because literally the NFL just started cracking down on this last year. Not to say that he shouldn't, again, not saying that he's being targeted or anything like that. I think the response to that is legitimate. The questions about it, trying to understand how it happened, why it happened, and how much the team was able to prevent that from happening, and how much of it like was he able to prevent, legitimate. But to then label as maturity, it's just like I don't think that's fair. Um, the whole liking things on on Twitter and things like that. Like I have a bigger problem with the people that stalk his mentions and the people that are stalking his likes. Like let him live. Again, I maybe it's a horrible example and maybe it's a horrible comparison and maybe it's not fair. But I feel like right now, the Memphis Grizzlies would happily take whatever the hell JMO's going through over what they have to deal with Ja Morant. Like, if you have a problem with how JMO runs his social media, just be glad that he's not out here. Again, he's not flashing guns. He's not out here just completely, inebriated or anything like that. He's never went at the fans. He's never went at the media. Like these are things when most players find themselves in these situations, you see them start to lash out. And I think that's always kind of fair. Like then it's fair to question maturity because that's when people can say, well, you put yourself in this situation. Why are you lashing out? He has not done that. So I feel like the maturity questions are ridiculous. The whole and then anybody that's bringing up the whole like him giving like a lot of money to kids for waters is just weird to me because we also applaud like athletes when they go to restaurants and they leave like enormous tips for dinner bills, but yet he can't give $100 to a kid for a water bottle. Doesn't make sense to me. So this whole like coverage or just like this harping on his maturity is played out in my eyes. It's ran its course. I'm kind of over it at this point. The one thing that is legitimate, and I don't like it, but it's at least a legitimate like critique of him, are the drops, right? The drops are not great to hear, but I understand that as media and who are watching practice and you're looking for consistencies. Well, sometimes negative consistencies come up. And if you start to notice that, like, hey, these certain passes are thrown to him and he's not catching them, there's a level of concern. Now, what I wish there was more context of, and this is what I got into with Jeremy during their stream, and I asked him was, okay, in terms of the drops, is it a chemistry issue? Is it a technique issue? Or is it just seem like his head's not in the game? Because I think if it's the latter, if his head's not in the game, yeah, probably a red flag. If he looks like he's not interested, if he just looks like he's running through the motions and he's not trying, yeah, that's something to be concerned about. But if it's a technique or a chemistry issue, well, that gets worked out through repetition, right? We have to remember this time last year, Jamo was not doing these things. He was not able to run routes. He was not able to catch passes from Jared Goff. He didn't understand. He wasn't yet learning how Jared Goff sees routes and throws routes, and he's now doing that. So the chemistry part is that needs to be done through repetition. That needs to be done through practices and him just continuing to run routes with Jared, and so that they can continue to get on the same page, and that will get worked out. The other thing that Jeremy did acknowledge is that he does believe there's a technique issue. So apparently, Jamo likes to body catch, right? And anybody who's watched football and has heard other receivers talk or anything like that, that's almost like a no-no, right? Like you want to be able to pluck the ball with your hands because it's easier to corral the ball and make a secure catch. If you start taking passes to the body again, corners and safeties are going to play through your body's going to lurch, your pads are going to hit the ball, and it's going to be much more difficult to secure a pass. So there seems to be a technique issue that JMO has to work through. Again, that's not a red flag though. Like again, this is the stuff that needs to be happening during mini camp and OTAs, is that they start like the coaching staff starts to notice these things and they kind of can pull them to the side and be like, hey, you got to be stronger with your hands, right? You got to be able to go up and attack the ball with your hands. The little bit of receiver that I played in high school, that's all we ever heard. We used to like, yes, you get yelled at when if you try to body catch. Coaches want you to attack the ball with your hands because that you have a better chance of corralling that pass. And so it's annoying, and I'm sure it's annoying for some of you guys as well, right? To hear about JMO's drops. But I think what we need to start asking, if you're seeing people constantly bring it up, is like, okay, ask the question, like, are we talking, is it a technique issue? Is it a chemistry issue? Or do you just think that he just like isn't trying? Because that'll give you a better indication of like how concerned you should be. So as far as me, I asked you guys in the post, right? If you were concerned. And a lot of people were saying no. A lot of people were saying it's June. There's no reason to be concerned. And I would tend to agree. And I feel even more strongly about that now, knowing how these drops are occurring. Again, chemistry and technique, that's what this time of the year is for, so that he can get better at those things, so that he understands again how a ball comes from Jared Goff and when to put his hands up. We've seen him make, again, great hand catches. So it's not like he can't catch with his hands. And it's also just because he likes to catch with his body doesn't mean that's a terrible thing either. Tyreek Hill is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and he routinely catches with his body. So, and one thing that at least that those two have in common, they're both really fast. So if you outrun coverage, yeah, I guess catching with your body isn't going to be the worst thing as long as you catch it. But if you can catch it with your hands, you increase the likelihood that you'll be able to complete catches and finish catches.